science enthusiasts. My name is Jason Zakowski. I'm a high school chemistry teacher and science communicator, but I'm also the dog dad of Bunsen and Beaker, the science dogs on social media. If you love science and you love pets, you've come to the right place. So put on your safety glasses, do up your lab coat, hold on to your tail. It's time for the Science Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Science Podcast. We hope you're happy and healthy out there. It's been a busy week for our family, leading into some downtime, which has been nice. I had some really amazing presentations in the big city just south of us, which was tough to be away from the family, but it was really rewarding giving those presentations to a different school district. And now we have winter break. And just in time for winter break is a whole boatload of snow. Many boatloads, in fact. It snowed for 2 days straight, and Bunsen can't get enough of this. Well, what's on the podcast this week? In science news, we're going to look at the reaction between the sun and an oil spill with some promising news. In pet science, we're going to look at an ancient gene found within wolves that may have led to the teeny tiny dogs of today. Our guest in Ask an Expert is the effervescent Dr. Gail Barnes, who will regale us with tales of working in R&D with, of all things, Tetra Pak. It is a fascinating discussion. Hey dogs, somebody spilled oil in a supermarket, and they were asked how much of it they spilled. They replied, all of it. Like olive oil? Okay, all right, that one. I was trying this week to find something that fit. On with the show, because there's no time like science time. This week in science news, let's chat about oil spills. I don't know about you, but oil spills are like big oil spills, not like you spilt olive oil on the counter. That's still disheartening. But big ones are really hard to witness. They're awful. When I see the images on television, I just feel for the people that live around the area, but also the destruction of the biodiversity. On land or on the water, it's all the same. It's just bad news. And with our reliance still on oil and the transportation of oil spills are inevitable for the next decade or so. We're still going to be drilling for oil. We're still going to be moving oil around. So while the story starts off kind of depressing, there is some good news. And this caught my eye because I think we could all do with some good news. Okay, when oil spills happen, especially like big ones like Deepwater Horizon, a lot of data was taken during the spill and after the spill. And up until the bright point of the study, it's generally been bad news. Oil in the ocean reacts with oxygen in the air, and it forms these long chains of carbon that is really difficult to get broken down. In fact, when they looked 8 years later after Deepwater Horizon, they found a lot of the molecules really haven't done much since they were exploded out into the ocean. So where is the bright point in the study? Literally, it's the bright point in the sky. See what I did there? So a team of researchers that recorded this in February in Science Advances found that the sun can break down and remove as much as 17% of the oil that's on the surface of the Gulf of Mexico after big oil spills. Now, the case study in this case was deep water. Now, I did talk about how some of the reactions aren't great and it forms these long chains, and that's what previous researchers were looking for. But this team looked at a different type of molecules that could be dissolved by the ocean. The sun rapidly changes some of the oil, not all of it. Remember, this is 17%, but it's better than zero. It changes it into molecules that can dissolve in the ocean. This is called dissolution. So chemists to the rescue, Daniel Freeman and Colin Ward, they're both from the Oceanic Institution in Massachusetts. They took samples from Deepwater Horizon spills and they put them on glass discs. Then they took samples and they irradiated them with UV light. Basically the same kind of wavelengths of light that you'd get from the sun. Then after the irradiation, they analyzed what happened to the oil. So what did they find from blasting the oil with wavelengths of light? Well, interestingly, the shorter wavelengths did a little bit better. Longer wavelengths like the red did worse, and it could be just because they got scattered more easily when the oil slick was on the water. That was something interesting that was in the study. The intensity of the light helped, and seasonal changes where there is more intense UV light would break down the oil a lot faster. So using computer simulations, they found that the best case scenario was all of these short wavelength UV light, probably during a more summer season, more, there's greater sunlight that's hotter. It broke down 17% of the oil in the sample. It dropped to about 3 when they bombarded it with longer wavelength light. So that's the quote unquote bright point of an oil spill. During peak times of UV light, 17% of the oil should be broken down based on what happened in the lab. That doesn't mean we rely entirely on the sun to, make up for the mistakes. Oil is toxic. I worked in the oil patch. I don't know if I've talked about this on the Science Podcast lately, but in between teaching contracts, if you know anything about Alberta is the oil and gas producer of Canada, and I got a job working in the oil patch and working with crude oil that comes out of the ground, and that stuff's like nasty. And I see pictures of just like an incredible amount of it oozing out into the ocean, and it just makes my stomach sick. So there's hope. The sun does help us out a bit. It's not everything, but when there's a giant oil spill like that, even a little bit is something. That's science news for this week. This week in Pet Science, we're going to look at tiny dogs like Chihuahuas and Pomeranians and other small breeds, toy breeds, and how they came to be. So if you ask the average person, me included, I would probably say, if you said, where did a Chihuahua come from? I probably would say over successful breeding lines, a smaller and smaller and smaller dog was selected. Well, that's sort of correct, but there's more to the story than that. In Current Biology on January 29th, a bunch of researchers from the National Institute of Health, NIH, identified a specific gene mutation in dogs that is present in wolves from over 50,000 years ago, long before we thought about making tiny dogs. So there are researchers that have been looking for this gene, I guess. I didn't know that, because if they could prove that the tiny gene existed in the wolf line, it not only would suggest how that gene got to dogs today as the wolf was domesticated, but the starting point for successful breeding programs to continuously get that gene bred to the next. Credit goes to Jocelyn Falacius, hopefully I said that right, because she suggested that the team search for sequences around this gene. This approach netted them a reverse form of insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. This gene variant correlates to dog body size. A gene mutation that has it backwards would mean that the dog body size would be tiny. So the whole science is pretty detailed in genetics gene sequencing. The team looked at 51 dogs and they measured the exact body type and this IGF serum level, which is a hormone for insulin. And there was a significant relationship between the gene that was present for IGF-1 and body mass. So there's a connection. So then from that point, they're like, okay, well, what is this gene that's coding for it? Okay, a little bit of high school biology. So tiny dogs had the homozygous alleles for the small size. We're going to call them C alleles. And the bigger dogs had the T allele, or they had a mixture of the C and the T. So the team was able to find that if the dogs both had the C allele, there's a great correlation with being small. And they found this when they analyzed toy breeds and small schnauzers compared to the larger poodles and the larger schnauzers. When they looked at mixed breed dogs, the bigger the dog, the more they found the T allele. And the more they looked at little dogs, the smaller dogs of the mixed breeds, the more they found the C allele. So because there's such a strong association between these C and T alleles and body mass variation, the team called the C allele the small allele and the T allele the large allele. Now, this becomes important as we go throughout the story. Now, that's within dog breeds. How are you going to look at wolves? They did what you'd think they did. They looked through ancient wolf DNA to see if that IGF-1 mutation, that insulin growth factor that's backwards, to see if it was there and when it showed up. The prevailing theory is that dogs and wolves were relatively the same size until about 20,000 years ago. That's when they were domesticated. However, they found this gene in a 54,000-year-old Siberian wolf. So what does this mean? Well, it means that possibly in the wolf population, very, very rarely, you would have a tiny dog because this gene would be presented. As the researcher said, it's like Mother Nature kept this gene in their back pocket. One thing that's really interesting is that this finding of this reverse insulin growth hormone holds up for coyotes, jackals, and other members of the canids family, like African hunting dogs. This domestication of those types of dogs and body size is also related. So you have tiny dogs like Chihuahuas, but then you also have dogs that are much bigger than the gray wolf, like Great Danes. Have you ever seen a Great Dane up close? What about an Irish Wolfhound or a Newfoundlander? Like Bunsen's a big boy. I'd say he's not much bigger than a gray wolf, or they're about the same size. But like a Great Dane can drink water out of a sink when it doesn't need to stand up on its paws. That's an exciting area of research, is dog size and its relation to genes. So tiny dogs and ancient genes. That's pet science for this week. Hey everybody, before we get to the interview section, I thought I would just give you some ideas about how you could support the Science Podcast. Number one, you could support us on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/BunsonBurner. There's multiple tiers of support, and the lowest tier of support is not much more than a cup of coffee a month. The second way is you could check out our merch shop. We've worked really hard to partner with clothing companies that do a great job of providing vibrant colors and soft feels. We also have the Beaker Stuffy for sale. It's so cute. The third way you could support us is giving us great reviews on our podcast playing apps. Any kind of review helps. And if you can't find a review, share our podcast with people. Thanks, everybody. Now back to the interviews. It's time for Ask an Expert on the Science Podcast, and I have Dr. Gail Barnes, food scientist, with me today. How are you doing today, Gail?
I'm very well, thank you, Jason, and I am absolutely delighted to be with you today.
Yay! I'm so excited to talk to you. You have such a unique background in science, being a food scientist, and we'll get to that right away. First off, where are you in the world? Where are you calling into the podcast from?
I'm calling from the Midwest, from near Chicago.
Okay.
Actually, slap bang in the middle of the largest area of forest preserve in Cook County, which is a big county in Illinois near Chicago.
Now, have you lived in that area for most of your life? Or have you moved there? Have you moved around?
I've moved around, as you may guess from the accent. I was born in South Africa. We came to the United States in 1998 and lived in Georgia first, and then moved from Georgia to Illinois. And everybody said we wouldn't be able, coming from Africa, having lived in Georgia, we wouldn't be able to take the temperatures, but we have acclimatized. We love Illinois. We love the prairie. It has a beauty of its own, and love living here.
Well, as somebody who lives in the prairie region of Alberta, Canada, I have to agree with you. There's something about that sunrise that's just flat, and the sun comes up, and it's just, chef's kiss. So I mentioned at the start when I introduced you, you're a food scientist, and you're Dr. Gail Barnes. Could you talk a little bit about your education?
Sure. When I was at school, for some reason, I just fell in love with biology, and I really, really wanted to study biology. But the only the closest university to us only took 30 students a year. It was a very, very small class. And I can remember just studying so hard and being so anxious that I got into that class. And I did, and I graduated. I got a double major in biology. Decided, when I went in to study at university, I didn't necessarily want to do a higher degree. I wanted to do a teaching diploma and become a teacher.
Oh, okay.
But got, still in love with biology, and I wanted to stay on. So I did an honors degree. The honors degree turned into a master's degree in biochemistry. Yeah, then I hit a speed wobble because my professor in the biology department didn't feel that I had it in me to do a PhD. In fact, she said that I would dilute the gene pool if I ever did a PhD in biology.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. I had a perfectly balanced personality after that. I had a chip on each shoulder. So I didn't know what to do. So I reverted to doing a teaching diploma. I took out a student loan, and having been through the whole student loan thing, I can only have the most sincere sympathy for anybody who has a student loan. I did a teaching diploma, and then I taught. But, the dream of wanting to do a PhD didn't go away, but couldn't do it in biology. And so I found out that the Department of Applied Chemistry were looking to establish a PhD program in food science.
Okay.
And I thought, well, this is a chance for me to kind of get back on track with my dream of doing a PhD. But I had no money. And it also meant that when I went to see the head of the department, I had to tell him the truth that, there is another professor at this university. And I said, I just let it have him straight. She said I would dilute the gene pool of scientists.
It's so terrible to tell that to a student. I can't imagine ever telling that to a student.
It was, it was horrible. I can't tell you what it did to my psyche. I'm not joking when I said I had a chip on each shoulder. Anyway, it turned out that his daughter had had a similar experience with this professor, and he said he was willing to give me a chance. But I still had no money.
Oh.
So we managed to get me bursaries and scholarships and support from the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. And I started to do a PhD in food science. Just one thing, though. I only had chemistry 1. Whoops.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah. And, I was about to do a PhD in chemistry. So the Senate of the university agreed that if I did second year and third year organic chemistry, they would allow me to proceed with the PhD. So I did second year organic chemistry while I was teaching. I'd finished teaching school and zip down to the university and go and study and get notes. People took notes from me during the day because I couldn't take notes. And anyway, so long story short, I did second year organic chem while teaching. I did third year organic chem while doing the first year of my PhD. And 4 or 5 years later, I was on the stage in my red gown, and the biology professor came up and apologized to me.
Oh, that must have been sweet.
I always imagined walking across the stage and looking her in the eye. But when it actually happened, it didn't matter.
No.
The only thing that mattered is I'd done something that I wanted to do. I don't think doing a PhD, don't ever do it if you're listening to this. Do it because of yourself, because of something you have in your heart that is driving you. You'll never get paid for it. I hate to say this.
No.
In fact, you'll find that you're overqualified, which if I may lead into the next part of my career, how did Gail leave pure science and move into marketing?
Yeah, I'd love to get into that. I think you're referencing your time with Tetra Pak. Is that correct?
Just before Tetra Pak, it was
Okay.
Lever Brothers.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
So there was I about to get my PhD, and I needed a job. So, if you're at a university or a college, you have those times of the year when people from industry come and they set up shop and you go for interviews. So Unilever was there, and I went, of course, to the people. There was a different part for if you were wanting something in research or science versus the other part, which was marketing. They were on two different sides of the hall. So I walked up to the research people and I introduced myself. And basically they said with a PhD, I was too highly qualified. The highest academic qualification they would consider would be a master's. So whoops, I kind of missed that by one higher degree. And so I thought, oh gosh, what do I do? And I sort of stood in the middle of the hall and I looked across to where Unilever and Lever Brothers marketing were on the other side, and using what seemed to me perfect logic, I wandered over. Now imagine this, it was the time when for some reason I was totally into camo. So there was this, I was totally dressed in camo. The long blonde hair may have been loose, and I sauntered over to the marketing people and I said, I'm here to apply for a job. And they said, what experience do you have? So I said, absolutely none, which I think makes me perfectly qualified, because I have just been rejected by your colleagues over there for almost having a PhD and being overqualified. And they looked at me and they said, okay, come for some interviews.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. So it's always been incredibly useful when I've worked for large companies to have a background in science, particularly when the people in R&D used to play tricks on me. After I was at Unilever, at Lever Brothers, I went over to Nicholas Kiwi, which is now Sarah Lee, and they would bring me things and say, here's the product you asked for, and I'd look at it and I'd say, it's not a cream, it's something else, because I would understand the chemistry behind what we were making. And when I joined Tetra Pak, of course, being able to understand, having spent a lot of time in a pilot plant, the different types of stainless steel that you can get. I remember being hauled out in the middle of the desert in the Middle East once with somebody who wanted me to look at his stainless steel tanks and give expert advice. So we did that, and were able to give him the advice he was looking for. He was had a very large dairy farm. He got some new tanks and his problems were solved. So he was a happy camper.
Oh, wow.
So, as a scientist, it's always been a source of regret that I haven't worked in a pure role of research, but I've worked together with people in that role. And then I've been responsible for rolling out the results of that, but having that knowledge and being able to go one-on-one with the people working on innovation and R&D has always been, I've always appreciated being able to do that.
I've heard that from lots of guests who have a PhD and maybe aren't working in quote unquote like pure science, that their background with a PhD is invaluable to wherever they work, be it in coding or marketing. It's just problem solving, being able to get your PhD.
Absolutely. And, I couldn't have phrased it better. It's especially if you've had problems along the way. And I had lots of problems along the way, whether it was funding or just, being able to register in the first place. But one of the good things about problems, one, it's character building stuff, as we used to call it. But the other thing is, the more problems you solve, the better you become at solving them. Seriously, that's
Yeah.
not, if you're young and you're listening to this, this is not nonsense. This is the person who learned it the hard way. You carry that experience with you. And more than anything else, you carry the determination
Yep.
to stick to it till you
Yep.
solve it.
The resilience, you don't give up.
No.
Yeah.
You learn the resilience along the way.
Cool. So, Gail, can we talk about your time with Tetra Pak? Do you have, what did you do with Tetra Pak? Because that's something the average person who's listening will recognize right away, like Tetra Pak. What did you do there? Is there any interesting stories from your time with Tetra Pak you could share?
Oh, wow. Many interesting stories. I started with Tetra Pak when I was in South Africa, and I was responsible for not the innovation around the packaging itself. You know, Tetra Pak makes packaging for both chilled and aseptic systems. Aseptic packaging, of course, means packaging that you don't need to refrigerate.
Mm-hmm.
And there are no nasty chemicals in the product. It's because you take a very pure product and you pack it in a very pure and clean environment into a clean package. That gives you a product that will last at room temperature until you want to use it. And depending on the kind of product, that can either be months or years. So I was responsible not for developing the packaging, but for working with folks, with companies, for developing the products that would go into the packaging.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Oh, yes.
Like the juices, the milks, the whatevers, right?
Absolutely.
Oh,
and
that's so cool, Gail.
my personal favorite, the beauty from the inside. And as I've got older, and if you're young, you have no idea what's in store for you, my dears, the digestive health products.
The digestive health. Can you talk to us about that real quick?
Yes, I can, because either because one is not getting enough exercise, or because one is getting slightly older, or a combination of the above, or just because a lot of people have digestive health issues, going doesn't get any easier as one gets older. And digestive health products can either include prebiotics, which are things, substances that you will put in the product that will help the good organisms. Those are called the probiotics, which have been shown to help you keep your digestive health going, or to put it in more grounded terms, you going. And so I've worked with companies like Danone, worked with products like Activia, worked with a lot of companies in Asia where they have very advanced digestive health products. And, you know, to give you an example, during COVID, I wasn't getting, it's still during COVID, I'm still not getting as much exercise as I should. And so I take 2 little tubs of yogurt a day. I do have to reinforce with Metamucil. You know, some of us need a little bit more of a push than others, but the joy of going regularly is just wonderful. And how do you know if you've got it right? Well, I'll share this tip, which I got from the chairman of the largest dairy company in the world, who shall remain nameless, but if you know the dairy industry, you probably know who I'm talking about. And he said the key to being able to check if you've got a really good digestive health product is no toilet paper. And seriously, during COVID, this was probably the most applied of my applied chemistry ever. He was right. You can get down to 2 squares or even 1 square if you fold.
Oh my goodness. I had no idea before we started talking this is where our conversation would go. But it's fascinating. I mean, there are products out there that help people, stay regular, right? And it's a big industry and it's hugely important for those people, right? So it's like, yeah,
Absolutely, especially when toilet paper is
is
selling
gone.
out.
Yeah, when it's gone. Well, you know what, doctor? I'm worried about Omicron, and maybe we might have to take your advice to heart if people start panic buying a toilet paper again. We'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
They
crossed.
won't, Jason. Fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
fingers crossed. um, wow, I think I could have. We could probably talk for hours about your time with Tetra Pak because I just have so many questions about other stuff. Can I ask just one follow-up question before we move on?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what fascinates me about some of the Tetra Pak products is they don't spoil, and they make a milk, right? Like you guys, the Tetra Pak company makes like a shelf stable milk. Can you explain any of that?
Of course I can. I'd be delighted to.
Okay, thank you. I don't mean to put you on a spot, but like,
No.
I know like milk spoils. People who are milk drinkers know that it goes bad and you can't drink it. It's got to be refrigerated. Like if you leave milk on the counter for a day, it's done. Like it's just over. But these things, I see them in Costco and they last like months, years.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And, milk is a growth medium. It's got so many nutrients in it that any bug that comes, or microorganism, as we prefer to call them, that comes along, says, hey, let me grow in that. It looks really fun. So here's how it works. If you have a high acid product like an orange juice, that doesn't spoil so quickly because it's a high acid product. But milk is low acid, so microorganisms love to grow in it. So what happens is that you can treat that milk, and you can either use heat or you can use filtration, but heat is the process most commonly used, and you can heat the milk for a very high temperature for a very short period of time. What happens when you do that is that you produce a product that is commercially sterile. Commercially sterile means there is nothing left alive in that can grow. There are nothing that is pathogenic, nothing that is harmful left in the product that can grow. So you treat it, high temperature, short time, and so you get a very clean, pure product as a result. Then, because you've got it in an environment, in processing equipment, and in an environment in the factory that is super, hyper clean, you pack it in that super, hyper clean, germ-free environment into a very clean and pure package, which you have made sure that you've sterilized and cleaned before. And then you seal it so that there is no contamination of the product in the package. So you process to get a very pure product, you pack it in a very clean environment, and then you put it in a very clean package and seal it up right away. And that gives you a product that is shelf stable. We were talking about the desert earlier. You can take this out and leave it at 36 degrees centigrade, 40 degrees centigrade, and it won't have spoiled. Now, I do have to tell you that if you do that, it won't have spoiled. But yes, there will have been some taste changes because there are still proteins that are in the milk. And if you heat them, they can undergo some changes. And there are some aseptically treated products, if they've used a temperature that's a bit high, for example, in the olden days, like 5-10 years ago, dog years ago, this could have been a problem. But nowadays, people have really found the right time temperature relationship so that there's, when you serve the milk cold, there is no difference in taste. In fact, some people say that long life milk tastes creamier than pasteurized milk.
it just blows my mind. I just love that area of science and technology. And again, like I have a million questions for other products. But thank you for talking to us just about the Tetra Pak milk. I see, because I'm a high school chemistry teacher. I see kids drinking like a little milk in a juice box kind of thing, right? And I'm like, hey, that's and that's that product, right? It may not be from Tetra Pak, but it's using the same kind of technology, and it's just fascinating to me because that stuff didn't exist when I was a kid. Like you got your little milk carton, and it had to be kept cold. It's almost like science fiction.
And, the thing is, people struggle to believe that the manufacturers haven't done something evil to the product.
Oh, yeah.
There's something in it, but it's just the processing and being super clean. The rooms in the factory the halls where they do the packaging and the processing, they've got things like HEPA filters, overpressured air. In fact, in an Omicron environment, those are probably some of the safest rooms on the planet because, they are so super clean because of the HEPA filters, overpressured air, and, they clean that equipment. And of course, it's all made of beautiful. I love stainless steel. Don't you just love stainless steel, Jason?
It's really pretty.
It is. I always used to look at those filling machines and think to myself, I want one of those.
I love it.
Anyway.
I love it. Well, Gail, can we move on to the next question, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
So I have a quick question about something that you've done in your past that I think people are going to be fascinated about. It's this penguin snowflake product with changey ink. It's a super fun story. It's something I found when I did some background research on you. Could you tell us about that snowflake product, the penguin snowflake product?
I love talking about the penguin and the snowflake. So, I mentioned that I worked together with the innovation folks in Tetra Pak, and the company was invited to an innovation fair in Brussels in Belgium and required to come up with some piece of innovative technology that had not been made public before. Now, obviously, as a packaging company, Tetra Pak, there were things we were working on, but we couldn't show people. And we were, we taking a filling machine across to Brussels, was talking mega money to do. That wasn't an option. So somebody gave me the task and said, yeah, you are, Gail, do something that represents Tetra Pak at this conference, innovation conference in Brussels. And I'd been researching thermochromic inks or changey inks, which I love them. I love how you describe them. Now, thermochromic inks will change temperature they're inks that change color at certain temperatures. So the temperature band in which they will change is very specific. And below that band, you won't see the color. Above that, you won't see the color. So very, very specific. You hit temperature X and the color changes. So I didn't have any money for this project, but I persuaded the factory manager of one of the Tetra Pak factories in the United Kingdom to do me a trial run of some Tetra Pak packaging printed with thermochromic inks, the idea being that it would be a penguin with a snowflake, which would be invisible at room temperature. But when the product in the package was at the perfect temperature to drink, voila, the penguin and the snowflake would appear. So we made the packages, we filled them with water, and I had 4 little packages. Now, these were 200 milliliter packages. So if you think the little packs of milk that the kids are getting at school, the little square boxes, think they're about this big. And so perfect, they fitted in my hand luggage, and off I went to Brussels. So, how was I going to show the temperature development? Because I didn't have a fridge with me. But I figured out, being an applied chemist is really useful, that if I used one of these cold sprays that people use when they've got a sports injury,
Oh, yeah.
it would drop the temperature and the penguin and the snowflake would appear. So there I sat on my little stand at the Innovation Fair going squirt, squirt, and making the penguin and the snowflake appear. And then, of course, they'd cool down and disappear. And, for some people, I can tell you, I generated quite a crowd, which I didn't expect. And people would make me do multiple squirts because they couldn't believe it. It's like magic. Squirt.
It is like magic.
Squirt. And so, I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a great way to represent Tetra Pak. I did not think we stood a snowball or a snowflake's chance in a hot place of winning. Who was the competition? Well, some of the competition was the soda company who had air freighted in the soda machine from the space shuttle. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, well, okay,
You've got a squirt bottle in a little thing versus this giant machine.
Yes, that was air freighted to Brussels.
Yeah.
I can give you a clue. It was air freighted from somewhere in the United States. So anyway, it's award night. And so I'm sitting there and the third prize winner is, it's not me. I'm not surprised. The second prize winner is, it's still not me. I'm still not surprised. And the first prize winner of the Innovation Oscar is, oh no, the penguin and the snowflake. So to this day, I have the certificate on my wall. I got a beautiful bronze. Well, it changes color. It's brass. It's supposed to be gold. Innovation Oscar in my office. The penguin and the snowflake won. And there are a lot of lessons one can take away from this. But personally, what I took away is it's about how you make people feel. And we made people feel wonder. Squirt, the thing changes color. And it's not about, if you're in innovation or if you've got a startup that you're doing, it's not about how much money you throw at it. It's about how much heart you put into it. And that's my lesson from the penguin and the snowflake.
I love it. What a touching story. Very cool, though. Literally cool. I want to say a lot of companies now have that color changey thermochemistry ink, right? Thermal. What is it called again? Sorry, the special ink.
Thermochromic inks.
Thermochromic ink. Yeah, I want to say maybe it's not the same kind of ink, but I see it on beer commercials when the beer is the right temperature, the mountains show up or something like that. So.
Exactly. The reason, Jason, it didn't take off for milk was there's just the slight difference between the cost of milk and, beer. And it was just financially not doable for any dairy company. And it was so sad because we were the first literally to do it in the world. But even at 1 extra cent per package, the margins, if you make a dairy product, are so hair thin. So the beer guys can afford it, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It really is.
People will pay more for a bottle of beer than they will for a thing of milk, right?
Yes, just a tad more.
Just a tad more.
And, even the beer guys do it for special promotions. It's fantastic. Or a Christmas promotion. New Year, something like that. But for everyday stuff, it can get expensive. But
right.
Thermochromic inks are truly fun to play with.
I love it. What a cool story. Gail, can I ask what you're doing now? Like, you've moved on from Tetra Pak, right?
I did. I joined a not... Tetra Pak kind of spoilt me for working for any other packaging company in the world. And So I joined a not-for-profit organization where I was working with the dairy farmers in the United States.
Mhm.
And then I started my own company. I was probably wrong age to start my own company. But it's been going, 7, 8 years now. And I do consulting work in the packaging industry, but strangely enough, my hobby, sometimes you've got to go where the universe is telling you to go.
Mhm.
I started to use Twitter because I was at a conference where Craig Newmark was, and I fell in love with Twitter that night. And, then I met somebody on Twitter who has a band, and because nobody knew what social media was, what Twitter was, or how to use it, I kind of joined the circus and virtually ran away to join the band. And that was actually 12 years ago. And what for a long time was my hobby, that gentleman became my first client when I formed my own company. We're still together. If you see me talking about music, it's because I'm still with the band. And,
Oh.
social media is a place where word of mouth really counts. And as a result of that, my teensy weensy company grew to have 2 verticals. The one which was the science-based and the consulting side, and the one which was the social media side. And then the pull from the social media side was just stronger. I got more clients because the clients that I had were telling other people about me and what I did. So now I have a very small group of clients to whom I offer a very high level of service. And for me, I'm a niche. I just want to cover my costs and put food on the table for my family. I'm not out there to afford the mega yacht on the Med kind of thing. And there is a niche for people who love what they do, who don't overcharge their customers. I don't have the infrastructure. I don't have the ritzy office on Madison Avenue in New York. But if you want somebody that is obsessing over your product at midnight on a national holiday, then that would be me. I've
Awesome.
just given you my elevator pitch.
Gail, what's your company called?
It's called Personify.
Okay.
Personify.biz LLC. Don't ask me why I called it Personify. I can't remember. I don't have to. It's Personify. Maybe because it's everything that I believe in, because I'm the founder, and I can do the things I believe in, and we don't have physical infrastructure. Where we do have something physical, we try and repurpose something. So we have this very strange looking group workspace where everything is recycled or repurposed. Our walls are covered with our clients' art. Our client, our love client for the last 12 years has been a band which has incredible poster art. So our walls are papered with our clients' posters from rock concerts. I mean, how cool is that?
It's pretty cool. So, Doc, one of the things we always ask our guests about is we have 2 standard questions. One is the pet story. We ask our guests to share a pet story from their life. Could you do that with us?
Yes, I could. My pet story is about hamsters. I have had 3 hamsters, and the last one, who unfortunately broke my family's heart when he passed, and so we haven't had any before, was Snowy for short, or Snowball. And Snowball was a winter white hamster and the softest creature. and most lovable creature you could imagine. But sadly, because he had double recessive genes, he was an albino.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was plagued with skin issues. So the most heartwarming story was I got to present at a conference, a dairy conference for veterinarians in Vancouver. And Snowball was at the height of having his skin issues, and there were 600 vets in the conference. And when I mentioned that Snowy had some issues and that the vets in the US hadn't been able to find what was wrong with him, I had 600 vets in Vancouver brainstorming how to help my little guy.
Aww.
I know. I mean, I still tear up when I think of it, just the love of all those guys who, still for years afterwards would contact me and ask, how's Snowy doing? Hamsters are just the most adorable and lovable of pets.
They got the little hands for feet, right? They got the little hands, which are so cute.
Oh, and Snowy was a true pocket pet. He would literally, I had a denim shirt and he would literally sit in my pocket.
Really? Oh, that's so cute.
And, they would come when I called them, Jason. I had two before Snowy, Dozy and Speedy. And my husband would say to me, they're not going to come when you call them. I would put my hand down and they would come running and both of them would run up. They were small enough to both fit on my hand at the same time.
Aww.
If that doesn't squeeze your heart every time that happens, they are so full of love, those little creatures.
That is a touching story. Thank you for sharing that with us, Gail.
You're welcome.
The other standard question is the super fact. It's something that our guests know that when they share it, it kind of blows our minds a bit. Now, we talked before about what your super fact might be, and there was some debate, but I think we're going to go with the scones or the scones story. Could you share that with us?
Absolutely. Well, it's that time of the year, Jason. So a scone story is very appropriate for people who might be making them. So I was visiting a friend and we wanted to make some scones, but we had no eggs. So we said, well, she's a biologist. I'm an applied chemist / food scientist. Come on. We're not going to let the lack of eggs hold us back. So we said, okay, what is it in eggs? And, we weren't baking experts. So we had to figure this out. We didn't know. We didn't know before we figured it out. What are the eggs doing? So we figured it out. It's probably the protein in the eggs.
Okay.
That are, having the effect in the scones. And so we said, protein. What do we have in your kitchen that we can use as an egg substitute? Well, gelatin. What do you have that would have gelatin with it? Jelly powder.
Yep.
So, okay, now the challenge is what concentrate of jelly powder do we make up? How much protein do we think there's in an egg? So then there was there were no calculators involved. This was all mental arithmetic. And we made up this gelatin solution. We put it in the scones and thought, okay, fingers crossed, how are they going to turn out? Well, the answer was completely and utterly, drum roll, delicious.
Delicious.
Oh, they were so good.
That is amazing.
That is my most practical example of what can you do if you are an applied chemist.
That's right. And for people listening, what can you do when you don't have any eggs in your house?
Exactly. We never tried it again. If you're successful once, retire while you're on top.
There you go. Quit at the height of your popularity.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Oh, the pun. We're all about the puns on the podcast. Good job, Doc. Good job.
Thank you. It's Monday. It's pun day.
It is. Thanks for sharing your super fact. That was great. The last section of the podcast is a fun one. We get to know our guest a little bit outside of what they do. You've had a very varied career, and you've had many different jobs and worn many different hats. What you wanted to talk about in the important to you section was your cause around conservation. Could you talk to us about that?
I'd be delighted to. Coming from Africa, I was born in South Africa, as I do. I'm very aware of the need for conservation because so many of the animals on the endangered species list are in Africa. Of course, they're also in Asia, and we have in the Americas, in the United States and Canada, we also have animals on the endangered species list. So what my company does is whenever there is a significant environmental event, for example, this year, it was CNN's Call to Earth Day, we will work with young up-and-coming artists to create what we call posters for change. So for Call to Earth Day 2021, we created a color-in poster of endangered species from around the world. So there were some from Africa, some from Asia, some from the United States as well. So we created a colored-in version because I volunteer with a local natural history museum, and they've got educational classes for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year, the kids got to color in the Call to Earth Day poster, which was a fun way of sharing with kids as they color in that these creatures really need our help. So we do it for World Environment Day. This year was Call to Earth Day. It creates an opportunity for a young artist, or I try especially to work with lady artists as well. There's a wonderful lady who's a single mom that does the most incredible artwork in Canada. We work with her as well. So it creates a stream of employment for them.
Mm-hmm.
It creates enormous fun for me. I can't tell you how much fun these posters are to do. And then they go out on social media, or this year with the relationship with the Elgin Public Museum, which is a natural history and anthropology museum, it created that further flow through as well to have the kids, you know, the next generation become aware of the importance of conservation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a win-win for everybody in that value chain.
Oh, wow. That's so good. That's so good. It makes my heart so full. What a great cause to be a part of.
Definitely.
Yeah. And just see, I don't know, there's something about art that also, what's the word? Like it just fills your soul, right? Like good art, music, art of paintings and pictures. It definitely is good for your mental health. So to be surrounded by that and be part of it must also be really, really inspiring.
It is. And, you know, this year we actually had an arts and crafts Christmas because my husband made all my presents down to the containers, which are going to be reused over the next few years because they're too beautiful to, to not use again. He made the envelopes himself. I made all our Christmas presents with a little bit of help from Etsy. The artists on Etsy,
they're so good.
They are. And, you know, they people like me who've got their own businesses. So I got many of the raw materials on Etsy and then I put them together myself. And that was so much fun to do. And they were the corporate gifts as well. So for folks who are getting a corporate gift for me that looks handmade, certainly one of a kind. You know, I can tell you that the band that I work with loves capybaras.
Oh, capybaras are cute. I love them.
They are. So I dressed the capybara in the band's tie-dye colors.
Oh, that's so cool.
And they've got little pins with peace signs and everything was purchased on Etsy. There's a lady that makes gorgeous little, safety pins,
Yeah.
and they've got beads and they've got little peace signs on them. So I got a onesie that fitted the capybara perfectly. And I did a sort of a tuck in kind of version to make it fit even better, and then pinned it with these nappy pins with peace signs.
I love it. Are we talking about a real capybara or like a stuffed one or a figurine?
Oh my goodness. No, a stuffed one.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yes, this lady on Etsy makes stuffed tie-dye capybaras.
Oh my goodness. There's a niche for everything.
There is, and I made one for my client, and then I've actually got him sitting next to me. There was a green one left, and the green one didn't have fur as stunning as the purple tie-dyed one. And so, because I support green issues and conservation, I thought, the green capybara needs to come to me. So I haven't dressed him yet, but I'm going to make a little outfit for him, and he's going to be our Christmas capybara from
Christmas
now on.
capybara. I love it. That's so good. Well, we're at the end of the interview, Gail. It's been an absolute blast to talk to you. So from me to you personally, thank you for talking to us on the Science Podcast today and sharing some really great stories from your past about working not great in, pure research, but how you've used your science background to really grow your career. So thank you for talking to us today.
You're very welcome, Jason.
Gail, where can people connect with you on social media? Do you have a website? Can people follow you on Twitter?
I'd be delighted if they'd follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at ZAGRRL. That's ZA, of course, for South Africa, GRRL. My teensy weensy company is at personify_, that's PERSONIFY_. I'm also, if you want the more serious side, I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram at Personify. We say we make stuff and we make stuff happen. So we do one of a kind stuff in wood. If anybody wants to see, we'd love to show you some of the stuff we've done for folks.
All right, that's awesome. I will make sure all of those links are in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, obviously don't do it while you're driving, but when you're in a safe place, give a click. You're just a click away from all of Dr. Barnes' good stuff.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, it's time for story time with me, Adam. If you don't know what story time is when we talk about stories that have happened within the past 1 or 2 weeks. Mom, do you have a story?
Okay, I sure do. My story has to do with our wonderful and studious golden retriever. Her name is Beaker, and she is doing a redo of level 2. Last night we went, and she did fantastic. I think it has to do with that we are also doing a redo of level 2. So we as trainers, and I use that term loosely, dog trainer, are getting trained ourselves. And so we are also gaining the skills and the knowledge again. And that is beneficial to Beaker because we're just doing that much better at training, like learning how to hold the leash properly. Right, Jason? Accordion style?
Yeah, I still don't know. But Beaker's doing better.
Yeah, she did really well. It's like she's putting it together. Her little calculating brain. If I say little calculating brain, I mean large calculating brain. One thing I do need to work on harder is just being more crisp with my hand signals because she was a little bit confused. And I think we both could work on that.
I like when I was taking her on the figure 8, and once she figured out what she wanted to do, she was so happy to do it.
Yep. 100%. 100%. She just really wants to please us because she's a little people pleaser. And she worked really hard, and then she was really tired. And that's my story. just Beaker doing level 2, redo of level 2.
So yesterday, Bunsen was very tired because it was, what was it, like wagon play or something?
He did not do wagon play.
He did nothing.
He did zero things.
He did zero things, but he
did not even have Beaker at home.
He was very tired for no reason, and he was laying down on the floor. So I decided to sit next to him and start petting him. And then he was like, "Oh, I want hugs." So I hugged him, and then he decided he didn't want to hug anymore and wanted to roughhouse. But then he realized his mistake and started licking my arm. Well, he pinned my arm down and started licking my arm. And yeah, we talked about this on a podcast before this, but Bunsen lick is so weird. It's like a weird snake, like a weird wet snake.
But he felt bad, right? He felt bad that he was going to roughhouse.
Yeah, he felt bad. And then he went on the couch and sat down. So then Beaker could stop attacking him. Because Beaker throughout this whole thing was just biting him. So I think it's kind of Beaker's fault that Bunsen wanted to roughhouse. Well, that's my story. Dad, do you have a story?
I do. It is winter 2.0, winter 3.0, winter 4.0. I don't know what level of winter we're in. But we had some unseasonably warm weather in February, and most of the snow melted. And then it's just been snowing constantly on and off for the last week. I think it's still snowing today, and it's gotten cold, much to Chris's dismay.
Yes, I want to go back to have a rewind to warmer winter. Can that be a thing? Warmer winter?
There are warmer winters, but just not where we live.
So we have to travel to, I don't know, Texas?
Sure. Yeah. They have winter down there, but it's not like ours.
No. Florida?
No.
California?
Yeah. Places very far away, Chris.
Should we go to Brazil?
No, that's too far away.
Okay.
We can't bring the dogs either.
That's true. That's true.
That's true.
So
but my story is about what?
I was just going to say my warmer winter is just snuggling with Bunsen.
Yeah, he's pretty
warm.
He's very warm.
And Beaker is warm too.
You know, having this back and forth is sometimes a bit of an issue, but to finish my story, the whole point of this is that Bunsen is the happiest you've ever seen a dog be happy. He roars around in the snow. He jumps in the snow. He puts his face in the snow. He eats the snow. He tackles Beaker in the snow. Beaker doesn't know what has happened because normally she is way faster than Bunsen. In the summer, she runs circles around him. He can't catch her, but it is Bunsen's time to shine. And with the extra snow, all of this snow, she cannot escape the wrath of Bunsen. And it's like all of that frustration of having her bug him comes out because she'll be minding her own business and Bunsen will just come along and tackle her. And I'm just like, you kind of deserve that, Beaker.
He's kind of like the Kool-Aid man. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love it. It's so cute.
He's so
all right.
good.
That's my story. Yeah, that's my story.
Okay. I like that story, except the winter part of it and the freezing part of it.
Hey, you're not supposed to wrap this up. Adam is.
I'm not. I was just waiting for Adam to come over.
Okay.
Well, that's story time for today. I hope to see you guys on the next podcast episode. Yeah. Bye-bye.
That's the end of another podcast episode. Thanks for coming back week after week to listen to our show. Special thanks to the amazing Dr. Gail Barnes, who regaled us with stories about her time in research and development all the way up to her current career path. Super fun, super cool. We'd also like to give a special shout out to our top tier patrons on Patreon. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So, take it away, Chris.
Chris Kelly, Samantha Dodd, Kimberly Bond, Nate Stephenson, Debbie Anderson, Courtney Proven, Renee Hardy, Mary Rater, Shelby Leggett, Mary Coos, Katya Lynch, Marianne McNally, Andrea Persons, Elizabeth Bourgeois, Karen Beth St. George, Bianca Hyde, Sandy Breimer, Tracy Hallberg, Jenny Jaguar, Leela Perriello, Lynn Armstrong, Lisa Sports, Catherine Jordan, Donna Craig, Lila Ashir, Jody Ogren, Liz Button, Kathy Zerker, and Ben Rathert.
For science, empathy, and cuteness.